Huddle podcast. I am your host, JR, and with me today is Alec Whitaker from the Penn State podcast here at Big Banter Sports. It's a booze, bets, and what was it?
Ball.
Booze,
Booze,
bets,
bets,
and
and
ball.
ball. Yep.
There we go. Okay, all right. I'll get it one of these times. So, how you doing today, Alec?
I'm good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
You want to tell the people a little bit about your podcast before we get started?
Yeah. So ours is probably different than some of the other ones you listen to. We like to talk about the bar scene. We like to talk about tailgate drinks. We have a crazy college kid that comes on and gives us the 15 leg parlays that don't hit, but he does it to try to pay his grocery bill every week. It's pretty funny. And then we do a little serious stuff. My co-host Nate is really into analytics and stuff. He's really good with that. So we goof off a lot, but we also give a lot of interesting stats that you're not going to find at a lot of other places. So we have a good combination of things.
There you go. So some stats mixed in with the booze.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. All right. Well, hey, if you have been listening for a while or if you've been listening to Alec's podcast, we are presented by Big Banter Sports, bigbantersports.com. Go check it out. There are tons of podcasts over there. We are starting some new ones this season, and we also have one for every team for football, and we have a few for basketball. We're working on getting that set up before the season starts. So your home for all Big Ten information, teams, everything like that. You won't be sorry for following in. Just so you know, follow here at the Big Ten Huddle. We have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the morning. Short little episodes, generally about 15, 20 minutes. Last week was a little bit longer because Eric and I got to talking a lot, but that's how Eric is, and we like him like that. So like and subscribe, and we'll get started with the show. First topic of the show is the Big Ten players in the AP poll. I was looking at this, and what surprised me, what kind of shocked me a little bit, was that in the first team, we actually have 10 Big Ten players. And from the SEC, only 7 Big Ten players. So what were you surprised to see here at the in the AP poll for the Big Ten players, Alex?
I mean, obviously, the abundance of talent, I think, a lot has been made that I don't think Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State have ever all been this talented at the same time. But then there's guys from Illinois, like that defensive tackle duo they have is insane. And we did our season breakdown yesterday, and we were going game by game, and we're like, yeah, like Drew Aller has to be ready to go game 3 to throw the ball because it's going to be hard to run on those guys. So obviously talent there. Cooper DeJean at Iowa. There's just guys everywhere. It's not just the big 3. And Braylon Allen, obviously, going to be, I think, a really high draft pick just because of his age, too, how he's a younger guy because he enrolled early. So there's just talent everywhere with these guys. I know that second team I believe he was on, but just kind of looking at the 2 teams, like it's stacked in the Big Ten. And obviously, next year when you add the 4 Pac-12 teams, it's going to be kind of semi-pro, I feel like, in this league.
Oh, for sure. And we didn't mention it last episode, but USC just got the 2026 top quarterback in that class. And man, the amount of talent that is coming into the Big Ten right now, it's crazy. But we don't even have to look at that because we have all this talent right here. For years, the Big Ten has kind of been known as only this defense conference, big D lines, strong, kind of slow, but really, really physical linebackers. And, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan have really kind of embraced kind of the smaller size guys on defense, but they really beefed up their lines as well. And I think we see that a little bit in here as well. I know it's kind of funny, but the punter gave us 10, so I like that. Tory Taylor from Iowa.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He is good. It's interesting when the best player on your team is your punter.
that was Rutgers last year, though, too, I think. So it's kind of been a common theme in the Big Ten, actually.
Right. And I was talking to the other Alec, who will be on next episode over at Rutgers, and I think he was telling me that the kicker this year for Rutgers could be the best team or the best player on the team. So, they're really doing it a certain way over there at Rutgers. So, Well, tell me, Alec, are there any players that you feel like the AP poll missed on or would have just kind of been right there, fringe players that could have made the first or the second team?
Yeah, for Penn State, I guess the second team, I would say. The first team I thought was pretty legit. I think Chop Robinson, the defensive end, has a chance. The thing is with him, he didn't have a lot of sack numbers last year. I think he had 5.5, but I'm pretty sure he led the country in pressures. He was kind of got the guy that set the table for everyone else. And now I think that defenses know who Abdul Carter is at linebacker, and Adisa Isaac's back another year, healthy again, and deny Dennis Sutton, who was a true freshman, 5-star last year at 3 sacks. He's going to have a bigger role. I think just that defenses are going to have to focus on these other guys too. Those pressures are going to start turning into sacks, because I feel like there were times last year where, especially early in the year, he was kind of the focal point of what defenses or offenses were looking to stop. And that's why it was a lot of pressures, not a lot of sacks. I think he has a good chance to get to 10 sacks this year. And I think he had 10 and a half, 11 tackles for loss. That number could get close to 20 if he keeps that up. So he was one. Abdul Carter then too. I know Harold Perkins was on that list. I think him and Carter are kind of equal. I know Perkins had like that 4-sack game or whatever. Carter did not have that, but he for a true freshman playing linebacker, I thought he did pretty good. I had some older fans actually telling me, obviously there were a lot of good linebackers that went to Penn State, but they said that in terms of a true freshman, because back when Joe Paterno was there, like true freshmen never played. They just didn't. It was always red shirt. They said in terms of seeing a true freshman play linebacker, he's the most advanced they've seen. And that included Michael Parsons. Now, he was coming from defensive end, going back to linebacker, so there was a learning curve for him, whereas Carter has, I think, always been a linebacker in high school and that. So, he had that working for him. But he's a guy who was really good last year, and a lot of people think could explode this year, especially because of how good the edge rushers are too.
For sure. And I think that defensive style we were talking about a little bit earlier, kind of the smaller linebackers, almost like safeties nowadays, really benefits freshman linebackers now, because I agree. Back then, it was kind of the same way with Tressel and John Cooper and stuff at Ohio State, and other coaches back in those early 2000s, 90s times. Freshmen hardly played, because not just because of the rule, but also they had to bulk up. They had to get that size. With nowadays, you can be fast enough, and you don't necessarily have to be that exact size. So, all right, great stuff, Alec. I appreciate that. We have another topic now that is a little not as good for the Big Ten. So if you have been following this song, and it's not been reported on nearly as much as I thought it would be. I've kind of got information here and there. I didn't talk about it last episode because it felt like information was still coming out, and I wanted us to have more information before we talked about it. But Iowa reveals the total number of athletes, not just football players, but total number of athletes impacted by the NCAA gambling investigation. The statement came out with 11 athletes who got caught up in this investigation. 11 current athletes, I apologize. 11 current athletes who got caught up in this investigation, and one of them being Noah Shannon, the starting defensive tackle. What does this mean for the Iowa Hawkeyes this season, Alec?
I guess losing a starting defensive tackle is never good, especially in a league that runs the ball as much as the Big Ten does. And Penn State plays Iowa pretty early in the year too, so if they don't figure out a solution by week 4, Penn State will definitely try to run it down the middle. And I know Lucas Van Ness wasn't really a starter there too, but that losing him too, that's a couple big losses on the defensive line, especially because they also lost, I think, Jack Campbell's gone. I think Seth Benson's gone too, the leading tackle or second leading tackler from last year. So there's a lot of like run stopping production that's gone there. So that's gonna be a little tough for them. But overall, I mean, I guess it's gonna be more mindful. I'm guessing it's gonna be a little stricter, a couple more meetings on gambling and the problems that come with it if you do it as a athlete. So I'm assuming that the impact might be a little more in the locker room, just things being a little stricter there than maybe on the field overall.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say was, Noah Shannon, obviously that's a loss,
Mm-hmm.
defensive tackle, like you said, running game in the Big Ten, that's huge. But, my question is how much are they having to address this
Yeah.
in the locker room? How much are they having to address this in meetings? Because, so we talked last episode about the distraction of Jim Harbaugh being suspended, but that's one that you can kind of just like have the chip on your shoulder and really just get after it and,
Mm-hmm.
and say, oh, we're going to play for our coach. But this one involves the players. And so
Yeah.
not only is it a distraction for them, but for Kirk Ferentz and what he's trying to do. And we know that program is so integral in player development. I mean, Phil Parker has done a fantastic job with some of those players on defense over the years. And it's just, it's crazy. I don't want to spend too much time on this, Alec, but just your future prediction, I guess. What are your thoughts? The gambling expert you are, booze, bets, and ball, the
Yeah.
gambling expert you are. Will this continue to be a problem in the Big Ten and NCAA football? Will this whole gambling stuff kind of continue on like this?
Yeah, I think it will actually. And
Yeah.
we did our season preview show last night, and we had Adam Breneman on, the media personality, who I know we're going to talk about in a minute, but he was pretty much, we were talking about the Ohio State quarterback battle and how, these teams are kind of hiding who the starter is. And he was talking about how when he would call games, he'd go into a game and not know who the starting quarterback was for the game he was calling as an announcer. And he said, he kind of put it out like, I think this eventually has to get to the NFL level where they have to put out a set depth chart. They have to release injury news because there's so much betting going on with it. Now that's outside the programs, obviously, but I think we're going to get to that point where it becomes such a big part of college football, where a lot of stuff that, colleges don't like to release. I know Penn State hates to release injury news unless it's season ending. And they haven't actually released the depth chart now for a couple of years. So that kind of stuff I think is going to change. And with NIL, obviously that plays into it too. Guys, if they get are they going to get deals with places like FanDuel and stuff? I know there's a couple pro athletes that show up in like commercials and stuff for those kind of betting services. So that's another interesting aspect of it too. So I think it's become a way bigger part of it. There's way more money in college football than there ever was, not just NIL, but because of TV deals and that kind of stuff. So I obviously, if there's money to be made, it's going to be made, and it's definitely not going away. It's probably going to expand significantly in the next 5 years.
I agree. Yeah, I didn't even think about the FanDuel deals and stuff like that. That could be going on. That could be just a much bigger, much more prevalent thing. If we could just get more college athletes to sign deals like Will Levis with mayonnaise
Yeah.
and Bijan Robinson with mustard, we wouldn't have to worry about this. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. But I also don't advocate for mayonnaise in your coffee or mayonnaise on your muffins. So, sign your deal, but don't put mayonnaise on that stuff. And a shameless plug, as we're talking about gambling, we are going to be starting a big bookie podcast here at Big Banter Sports. So look for that to be coming out soon. That'll give you all the gambling advice and stuff like that that you might be interested in. We won't talk gambling a lot on the show, but Alex Show and Big Bookie, they'll have you set for all you need. All right, our last topic that we'll be talking about is grading Adam Breneman's top 5 offensive coordinators in the Big Ten. So if you missed this, Adam Breneman put out his top 5 offensive coordinators, and it was mysterious, to say the least. And we're not gonna bash Adam here. Adam, friend of Alex Show, and a good Penn State tight end, right? Tight end for years. And of course he works with Big Ten Network and everything like that. So we like Adam, but it was kind of a questionable list. How would you grade this list, Alec?
Well, your search being 2, we like. 2 might be a little high for him, but he definitely, I think, deserves to be on the list. Longo was 1, right? So
I forgot to mention the list. So Phil Longo, number 1, Mike Yurcich, number 2 of Penn State, Josh Gaddis of Maryland, if you didn't realize he's there now. And then how do you pronounce the Rutgers guy name
Kurt
again?
Shiraka.
Kurt Shiraka
Yeah.
at Rutgers is number 4, and then Barry Looney Jr. at number 5 for Illinois. Sorry, I forgot to list
You're
those.
good.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a lot of Penn State ties in there is what I'm seeing. Josh Gaddis was an assistant at Penn State before he went to, I think, to Alabama is where he
wide receiver coach, right?
Yeah, wide receivers coach. Yeah, because they gave when Joe Moorhead left, they were hiring internally for the offensive coordinator job, and it was between him and Ricky Ronnie, and Ricky Ronnie got it. So that was after 2017. Yeah, so he went to Alabama, I think, and then Kirk Shiraka was the offensive coordinator at Penn State in 2020. Came from Minnesota, came to Penn State for a year, went back to Minnesota, not Rutgers. That was weird. So there's a lot of Penn State in there, I noticed. I'd probably put Sherrone Moore on there. I know he hasn't been the true one play caller at Michigan, but they averaged 40.4 points per game and I think like 480 total yards or something like that last year. So I'd put him on there. I understand Brian Hartline has not really called a game by himself before, so I could understand not putting him on there, but I would not have Josh Gaddis on there. It would probably be the one I would not. It would not be on my list. I know there's a lot of shuffling in the Big Ten this year because there was a lot of coaching changes. So there's a lot of new offensive coordinators in. So I can understand that this is a difficult list to put together right now. So you're kind of you're putting on there the guys you're familiar with, which obviously 3 Penn State guys on there. Adam would be familiar with them. So I do see that. Longo did a lot of nice things down at North Carolina, right? So we'll see how that translates to the Big Ten and Wisconsin, which has never been much of an air raid or air at all, I guess. So he obviously has done it other places, but I'll be interested to see how it does here. So yeah, I mean, I understand the list because there's a lot of unknown with other guys, but mine would probably be a little different.
Yeah, here's my thing with Brian Hartline. Okay, I get, and I fully agree with Sherrone Moore. Sherrone Moore, he was co-offensive coordinator for 2 years with 2 different guys, and the offense was stellar both times with both guys, and Sherrone Moore was a consistent one there. So in my mind, he deserves some credit for that. But my thing with Brian Hartline is even though he's never called a game yet, even though he's never, been called plays or anything, he is still by far the best recruiting, offense. I guess not by far. Sherrone Moore is a very good recruiter too, but him and Sherrone Moore are by far the 2 best recruiting offensive coordinators. I give the lean to Brian Hartline just because of the 5 stars and stuff that he seems to be able to get. But just by recruiting alone, I would think you at least have to give him 4 or 5 or something just to be like, yeah, this guy's in the position, but he's also got 2 5-star wide receivers already committed and a high 4-star as well. So yeah, to me, making this list was kind of like trying to make a Big Ten quarterbacks list this offseason.
That's another thing. That's hard to make. I think we looked at it when we were doing our season preview. I think Tulia is the only starter who started game 1 last year or something like that because JJ McCarthy didn't even start.
Cade McNamara started the first one.
Yeah. So there's a lot of turnover at quarterback in the conference too.
And that's hard because Tulia got hurt last year, so he wasn't his normal self. So it's like you just had all this mix up. You had JJ McCarthy and Tulia coming back, but then you have all these transfers: Tanner Mordecai, Hudson Card, Jeff Sims, and then you have Ryan Day, who can't decide on his quarterback, but he's going to be great because he's got 3 first-round picks and 3 Heisman finalists in a row. So you're like trying to decide this. It's like anybody who puts out a list, it's like just get ready, to endure the hate comments because they're coming.
It's more of a projection than like what you think right now. I don't know how you could put a Big Ten quarterback list for right now in there because there's just so much unknown with it outside of Tulia and McCarthy.
Right. And of course the media wants to do it because everybody wants to hear about quarterbacks. Everybody wants to know what's going on. And Drew Aller did play a lot last year for being the backup. He didn't start a game, did he?
No, there were a lot of people that wanted him to after they lost to Ohio State because, that's the end of your Big Ten run. And everyone's like, well, these games, they don't really matter. I mean, I think getting to 10 wins and then getting to go to the Rose Bowl and win it kind of matters.
Right.
So I still think it mattered, but they did do a good job of getting him in. I think in games where against lesser competition where you knew the defense wasn't going to implode, instead of keeping this like Sean Clifford the starter in when it was a 25 or 30 point game, they went to Aller when it was more a 17, 20 point game, like a couple scores less. And I think that gave him some valuable reps because I guess the other team was still technically trying at that point too, which helps. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. He actually got more pass attempts last year as a true freshman than both Sean Clifford and Trace McSorley did combined before they became the starters. And they started as in their third year and he's in his second year. Yeah. So I thought they did a pretty good job with that actually.
Yeah. Well, that's huge for Drew Aller because, this year there's a lot of expectations. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, man, dude, people are not giving him enough respect. Everybody talks about Nick Singleton, how great he is, and he is great. Don't get me wrong. But there were times last year when I was watching Penn State and I was like, man, give Katron Allen the ball because he's just eating it up right now. And yeah, so Mike Yurcich, to his credit, he has a lot of weapons this year. We'll see if Dante Cephas can kind of be that top 5 wide receiver that I think he can be.
I actually I don't know if that's going to happen. So there's a lot of stuff coming. The reports that come out of camp was the first one that came out right when fall camp opened was he was with the threes. And I think part of that had to do with acclimation process, getting here, learning the playbook, competition, leveling up from Kent State. But it sounds like Harrison Wallace and Keandre Lambert-Smith are definitely starting. And then it sounds like there's about 4 or 5 guys for that third spot, and that includes Liam Clifford, Sean Clifford's little brother, Omari Evans, a speedy sophomore who caught a couple deep balls from Aller last year, actually in game. Caden Saunders, he's a redshirt freshman, but him and Aller were both Ohio kids and are really good friends and would play together all the time. So they have a built-in connection there. And there's Malik McLean, the transfer from Florida State. So Cephas actually has a lot of competition for that final starting spot. So my thing is, I don't know if Penn State's going to have a true number 1 receiver this year. Like, I don't think a guy's going to catch 60 balls. I think the safer bet is that there might be 5 guys that catch at least 20, though. I think that's more likely than someone actually catching 60.
Yeah, kind of the hot hand approach. Who has it this game and who doesn't? Yeah. Because last year was like that. I remember the Ohio State game. Parker Washington just decided, that he was going to completely take over the game. You saw Sean Clifford running for his life, and he just decided, I'm just going to throw it to Parker Washington, and it worked out more often than not. So.
Yeah, that's a big thing. They got to find a lot of the guys they have now are athletic freaks. Like Wallace was a really good basketball player. Lambert-Smith, a deep ball guy. Omari Evans, a deep ball guy. They got to find the sure-handed kind of underneath guy that Washington was. I think that's the one thing they might miss. And I actually think it's going to be the tight ends, Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson, that pick up that slack more than a receiver does.
I've heard a lot of good things about Theo Johnson, so we'll see. We'll see how the tight ends do this year. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for hopping on, Alec. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead. We're going a little bit later again, but some good Penn State talk here at the Big Ten Huddle. Thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to talk about any of your social media or anything for your podcast there, Alec?
Yeah, sure. So the podcast Twitter is 3, the number 3, then a capital B, and then pod PSU. That's the username. And then to find the podcast on like a podcast platform like Apple or Spotify or something like that, just type in Booze, Bets, and Ball, a Penn State football podcast. And then on YouTube, it's actually under Whitaker Media, WHITAKER, and then Media, because I have it with other shows I do on there. So they're all under the same channel. So awesome. If you want to find it, that's kind of the places to look for.
Sweet. I will. I'll find that and I will put that in the description. Whitaker Media, so you can go there and you should be able to find your way to the podcast and all those other things from there. Reminder: we are brought to you by Big Banter Sports. BigBanterSports.com. You can find them on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of those places as well. I'll have the other Alec on with me at the next show, the Rutgers Alec. So we'll have him here. And then Spartan Dog from Michigan State, their Bacon Wire podcast. We'll have him joining us on Monday for that podcast. Any final thoughts, Alec?
No, I'm ready for the season to start. We've been talking about it a lot. I'm kind of ready to see it, I think, at this point.
Me too. Hey, Navy Notre Dame this Saturday at the very least. So we'll get to see that. So,
yep.
All right. Hey, thanks for coming on, Alec.
All right,
Thanks everybody for watching. Like and subscribe. See ya.